A lot of students have trouble breaking that barrier that stands between a band 6 and a band 7. I get it. It's a big leap. But there are some of you who are aiming even higher. You want a band 8. How do you get there? Well, I'm here to tell you that in my experience as a former examiner, it's easier to move from 5 to 6 than from 6 to 7. And it's easier to move from 6 to 7 than it is from 7 to 8. Each step gets more difficult. Still, you are a motivated student, and I can tell you that it can be done. Today, we are going to look at one of my favorite tools that you should be using in your IELTS preparation to see exactly what you need to be doing to hit your goal score of Band 8. If you've watched any of my other videos, you know how important I think it is that you use the official IELTS scoring rubric that Cambridge provides to help you level up your IELTS skills. This gives you the roadmap of exactly what you need to be practicing to hit your goal score. Still, I am always amazed that most of the students that I talk to have never even read it. It's free. It's available on the internet, and it tells you exactly what examiners are listening for. We're going to use it today. As a reminder, your IELTS speaking is graded across 4 areas: fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation. First, let's look at fluency and coherence. Now, like bands 6 and 7, band 8 talks about coherence. Namely, it looks at hesitation, repetition, and self-correction. At a band 8, students very rarely have to use repetition or self-correction. They are going to be speaking fluently through their entire answer. Still, some hesitation is allowed. The rubric says that occasionally hesitation will be used by the student to find words or grammar, but most of the time it's going to be used to think of ideas. What does that mean? Well, think of how you speak in your native language. Sometimes you and me have to pause or use a filler phrase to just think of what we're going to say next. We aren't looking for the words, and we aren't trying to put a sentence together with perfect grammar. We're just taking time to figure out what we're actually thinking. Here's a part 3 example question. Should teachers make learning in their classes fun? This is difficult even for me. I might have to buy time with the filler phrase. Wow, I've never really thought of that before. I think it's perfectly natural for all of us to have to pause sometimes to consider answers to questions. If you don't have to even pause or buy a little time, you've either memorized your answers or you're an AI chatbot. Also, you may be asking how the examiner can tell if you're looking for words or looking for ideas. I can tell you that as a former examiner, people act very differently when they don't know the words versus when they're just looking for ideas. It's oh so clear to us. Let's move on to lexical resource or vocabulary. Now, I know, unless you've listened to my previous videos, a lot of you think that the surefire way of getting a band 7 here is to use as many idioms as possible. Just drop idiom bombs on your examiner for the entire test. Of course, that is wrong. At a band 7, we have to have some ability to be using that less common and idiomatic language. Remember, the rubric never says the word idiom, with an awareness of style and collocation. While some mistakes are allowed, overall this means that we know what we are saying and how to say it. At band 8, this standard gets even tougher. Occasional mistakes are allowed, but skillful use is required. This is a more difficult standard to meet. Also, there's another big change for lexical resource at band 8. For the first time, we see the use of the word precise. Now, I'm always telling my students that if they are obsessing over learning the most advanced or scientific vocabulary they can learn, they're wasting their time. The rubric wants precision. Precision is the difference between these three words: groggy, tired, and exhausted. Those words are all related, but they mean slightly different things and are used in different ways. A Band 8 student is going to be able to use them correctly to get their meaning across to the examiner. As to general vocabulary, students at a Band 8 are going to have a wider vocabulary bank that they can draw from, and that vocabulary is going to come to them more easily. We're going to move on to grammar in a second, but I want to remind you that if you comment free in the comments below, I'll send you my IELTS self-assessment checklist. It's a good way to know what boxes you're hitting and what boxes you're missing as you study for the IELTS speaking exam. Also, I'm now offering 3 types of classes: self-study, self-study with coaching sessions, and a full live class with me. So if you like my videos and find them helpful, these classes are for you. There are links in the description and on the screen right now. I'd love to work with you to get you your goal score. Okay, let's move on to grammatical range and accuracy. Believe it or not, if I ask my students what their top concern is on the IELTS speaking test, a lot of them will say it's grammar. I've been teaching for over 12 years and I've never understood this. I can tell you that most non-native speakers understand grammar rules much better than most Americans. I think it's not so much that students don't understand grammar as that they are not practicing speaking enough to be able to produce those grammatically correct sentences. And this causes them to obsess over their mistakes. I really believe that speaking more often and getting feedback will improve most students' grammar confidence. But even if you are still making some mistakes, you can still get a Band 8 here. If we look at the rubric, we see that for the first time, Band 8 requires the majority of your sentences to be error-free. Band 7 only says that error-free sentences must be frequent. Band 8 also says for the first time that any grammar errors must be non-systematic. Now, a systematic error is the one that you keep making again and again and again. For example, let's say you're constantly making the simple grammar error of saying he when you mean she. Well, if you do it throughout your exam, this would be a systematic error, and you'd not be able to get a Band 8. Still, even at Band 8, and Band 9 too, occasional errors are allowed as long as they aren't systematic. Finally, let's look at our last skill, pronunciation. Again, we can see that Band 8 requires you to be able to use all of your pronunciation tools to get across precise and or subtle meanings. This is the difference between so cold and so cold. Also, while you can still make mistakes, you are going to be able to flexibly use things like stress and intonation and maintain your stress-timed rhythm across big chunks of your answer. I need to emphasize something. Remember, in pronunciation, especially in Bands 7, 8, and 9, we are never just talking about the sounds you make. We are talking about so much more. Stress, rhythm, intonation, pitch, duration, connected speech. If you don't know what some of these terms are, I recently made a video about them that I'll link to in the description. If you want to get a Band 8, you need to watch it. Of course, at Band 8, students can be easily understood, and their accent will have only a minimal effect on their intelligibility. This means you can relax about your accent. You don't have to eliminate it and sound just like me to get a Band 8. A Band 8 is not impossible, and you can get there. It's not magic. It just requires more coherent and relevant language, more precise vocabulary, fewer grammar errors, and a wider use of the tools in your pronunciation toolbox. Remember, the only way to get better at speaking is to speak out loud, so don't be afraid to do so. If you start today, you're one day closer to getting your goal score. Also, don't be afraid to reach out to me to join classes or just to ask questions. I love hearing from my students. I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, give me a like and don't forget to subscribe. Finally, share this video with your friends who are studying IELTS, because the only thing better than one Band 8 IELTS score is two Band 8 IELTS scores. Until next time, happy studies.